Tonight, fear and fire on an American street. Pro-Israel demonstrators torched in a terror attack as they marched for the hostages still held in Gaza.
It sounded like a boom, and then people started yelling and screaming.
What we know about the suspect and the victims. Plus, peace talks under fire. Ukraine strikes Russian nuclear bombers as negotiations face off in Istanbul. The latest on the war in Ukraine. And trillions in spending, massive tax cuts, and a looming Senate showdown. Trump's signature bill now faces its toughest test yet. Plus, a surprising discovery in Jerusalem. A 1,500-year-old artifact uncovered in a place no one expected. What it's revealing about faith in the Holy Land. All this and more tonight on Faith Nation. A daring assault deep inside enemy lines with an unprecedented attack on Russia just as peace negotiations to end the war in Ukraine are underway. Good evening and welcome to Faith Nation in Washington. I'm John Jessup. Well, Russian and Ukrainian officials met face-to-face in Turkey today for a second round of peace talks to try to end the three-year war, though no real progress was made. Those talks come on the heels of a surprise attack by Ukraine launching one of its boldest strikes yet. A coordinated drone attack deep inside Russia damaged or destroyed a significant portion of Moscow's bomber fleet, including aircraft that could be used in a nuclear war. President Zelensky says the operation was a year and a half in the making. So what does this mean for the battlefield as well as negotiations at the peace table? Joining me now to discuss, two experts from the Foundation for Defense of Democracies who will help break down this story as well as other international headlines, Ivana Stradner and Ben Cohen. Welcome to the both of you. Ladies first, Ivana, how big of a blow is this for Moscow, both militarily and strategically?
This is immensely important. This is probably one of the most important attacks since 2022, because more than 100 Ukrainian drones actually targeted air bases deep inside Russia, aiming specifically at nuclear-capable long-range bombers. It was just an incredible operation because Ukraine actually used trucks and smuggled drones inside Russia, and they were close to 4 Russian air bases. So Russian analysts and bloggers call this Russia's Pearl Harbor, and there is a good reason why they analyze this in this way, because this is important militarily and strategically. So Zelensky basically stated that 40 Russian aircrafts, which is 34% of Russia's strategic cruise missiles carriers, they were targeted. And their Ukrainian security service, they claim that this actually costs Russia $7 billion. But this is not only important militarily, this is immensely important also strategically, because this shows Russia's weakness. Russia, of course, downplayed this whole situation, but it also shows that Ukraine will not give up, and this will actually strengthen Ukraine's position in talks. Because make no mistake, Putin does not want to have negotiations in good faith. Some people may wonder, if this can actually escalate the war. I don't think so, because the only language that Putin understands is the language of power. So he's just buying more time, to reposition the military and continue with the attacks. And this war will not stop at Ukraine unless we stop it before that.
Costly both militarily and strategically. Ben, do you have anything to add to that?
No, I think Ivana is absolutely right. And I think the key point is that this incredibly audacious operation has weakened Russia militarily. But I don't think that we can rest on our laurels and assume that the war is won for Ukraine, or that Russia doesn't pose a threat to other frontline states in the region, in the Baltics, in Eastern Europe, that could potentially face Russian aggression down the line.
I want to follow up after just citing this. Russia and Ukraine, as we mentioned earlier, are meeting in Turkey. They only agreed to a prisoner swap in Turkey. Ivana, as a follow-up, does the strike, as you suggested, strengthen Ukraine's position in the peace talks, or does it risk escalating the conflict even further?
I actually don't think that this might escalate. I'm quite certain that putting my complaint to Washington, how actually Ukraine didn't show any effort to negotiate. Because as I mentioned earlier, Putin really understands only the language of power. And Ukraine understands very well that the only way that Ukraine can negotiate with Russia if they put Russia on the defensive. Because Russia can always just pack their stuff and leave Ukraine if they believe that this war will end. But as I mentioned, I'm very concerned that Putin just wants to buy more time to reposition his military and to continue, as Ben emphasized, already different security services from the Baltic states, from Poland, are warning that this war might not end at Ukraine.
All right, a lot happening in the world. I want to move on to another topic. There's another set of high-stakes negotiations brewing right now in the Middle East. Iran now appears poised to reject the latest U.S. nuclear proposal. Ben, how serious is the standoff right now, and what are the risks if talks do collapse with tensions so high across the region?
Well, John, it's actually not really clear whether there is a standoff because there are contradictory reports coming out. Some reports are saying what you said, that Iran is poised to reject this deal. But in the last hour or two, more reports have been emerging that, in fact, the US may present a proposal to the Iranians that is more acceptable to them. Now, what would that involve? It would allow the Iranians to carry on with some limited domestic uranium enrichment. The key divide here is over whether Iran should be allowed to enrich uranium domestically. Of course, uranium being the fuel that is the precursor to creating a nuclear weapon. Now, publicly, the stance of this administration has been that Iran should have no enrichment capacity at all. President Trump has said that in recent days. Vice President Vance reiterated it. No domestic enrichment capacity. That has been the stumbling block because the Iranians have said that for them it's a non-starter. So I think to some extent it's a question of who blinks first. But I would add that even if the US does dilute its position to some extent and allows a degree of uranium enrichment, it may not be enough for the Iranians to sign up to a deal. Ben. As to your broader question, what happens if this standoff ends, or if they're not able to reconcile these positions? I actually, in some ways, don't think that very much changes. In the sense that I don't believe that Iran is pursuing these negotiations in good faith to begin with. I think it's a delaying tactic. You know, we've seen several intelligence reports in recent days that would underline that.
Ben, we just have a few seconds left, but while I have you, I want to ask you about Gaza and some disturbing reports of civilians shot while trying to collect aid. Israel insists it didn't fire on them while Hamas says otherwise. How do we cut through these competing narratives in the few seconds we have left?
Well, I think, look, really what was leveled at Israel yesterday was a blood libel. You had a lot of media outlets claiming that Israeli tanks had opened fire on innocent civilians without really checking the evidence here. And we've seen that rebuffed by both the Israeli Defense Forces and also by the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, which is this private agency that is delivering aid in Gaza. They have denied that there was any firing by Israeli troops, and they've actually provided video of masked men, presumably Hamas gunmen, opening fire on those civilians. So I think what it shows is there's a real aid crisis in Gaza, and the international community needs to think very creatively about delivery mechanisms now.
I wish we had more time. Ivana Stradner and Ben Cohen, both with the Foundation for Defense of Democracies. Thanks so much for joining us this evening.
Thank you.
Well, here at home, police are investigating what they believe was a targeted act of violence Sunday in Boulder, Colorado. A suspect armed with a makeshift flamethrower attacked a crowd of pro-Israel demonstrators, injuring 8 people before being taken into custody. CBN national security correspondent Caitlin Burke joins us now with the latest on the Boulder attack. Caitlin, this is the second attack targeting members of the Jewish community in barely a week.
That's right, John. This attack is being investigated as an act of terrorism. The suspect, identified by the FBI as 45-year-old Egyptian national Mohammed Solomon. As you mentioned, he is in custody, and today he was officially given a federal hate crime charge. Witnesses say Solomon first attacked with a makeshift flamethrower before throwing a Molotov cocktail-type device into the crowd, screaming "Free Palestine." This video shows the suspect yelling at the crowd before being apprehended by police. He allegedly told police he had been planning the attack for a year and was specifically looking to target the, quote, Zionist group.
This has every single sign of being a hate crime. The perpetrator was waiting for people who were engaging in peaceful activity. It was a group of Jews from Boulder who were making a stand for freeing hostages who've been in prison since October 7th.
According to the White House, Solomon overstayed a tourist visa and was then granted a work visa by the Biden administration. On Truth Social, President Trump wrote that this kind of attack will not be tolerated in the United States. And White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt had this to say in response to questions about the attack.
We have seen two horrific cases of anti-Semitic violence in our country in the last 2 weeks, and it is unacceptable to this president and this White House. And rest assured, to all Jewish Americans across our great country, this president has your back, and he's not going to allow anyone to take part in violent terrorism, acts of terrorism in our country.
Sunday's victims range in age from 52 to 88, one of them a Holocaust survivor. John?
Just a tragic story. CBN's Caitlin Burke reporting. Thank you, Caitlin. Well, up next, a brutal test for President Trump's big, beautiful bill. Will the Senate rewrite or reject his signature plan? That's next on Faith Nation. Welcome back. The Senate is back in session this week and staring down a major task, hammering out the details of the president's big, beautiful bill. The economic and spending measure barely made it through the House with just one vote to spare, and with no expectation of support from Senate Democrats, it can only afford to lose just 3 Republican votes. Here to explain the bill's uphill journey through the Senate, CBN chief political analyst David Brody and the editor and publisher of Inside Elections, Nathan Gonzalez. Welcome to both of you again. So it's a 1,000-page bill. It's considered the big, beautiful bill. David, what parts of this bill are going to be a problem for GOP senators?
Do we have 4 hours, John? It's a lot.
Take your time.
Look, thank you. Well,
famous last
words.
words.
I know I'm under time constraints. That's right. Well, look, I mean, the senators have a lot of problems with this, right? It's going to add about $3 trillion to the debt, according to the CBO, the Congressional Budget Office. There's a debt ceiling hike in there of $4 trillion, Medicaid potential cuts, Social Security, maybe not, but definitely Medicaid. And so you just go down to SALT, the state and local tax deductions. And of course, the big one, of course, is that the House bill had $1.5 trillion in spending cuts, but Ron Johnson, Rand Paul, and others want to see more than those. And that's just the beginning. I've missed quite a few. This reminds me, John and Nathan, of a game, and I may be dating myself here, of Kerplunk. Remember Kerplunk with all the marbles? Right, and you took out the sticks and you were like, okay, well, the marbles are still there. Okay, now you put another stick there, marbles still there. So this is what the Senate is doing. They're moving the sticks around, and you hope all of the marbles don't crash there at the final, in the final end barrel there at the bottom.
You know, sticking along with David's theme of games, instead of Kerplunk, why don't we move to Guess Who? Nathan, who are the top Senate Republicans that you think we should watch, given that long list that David just mentioned of concerns among Republicans?
Well, because they have a couple of votes to spare, I think Senators Ron Johnson of Wisconsin or Rand Paul of Kentucky might not vote for it because of those concerns about adding to the deficit. But another batch of senators, Susan Collins of Maine, Tom Tillis of North Carolina, Joni Ernst of Iowa, John Cornyn of Texas, what do those senators have in common? They're going to be facing voters in 2026 in the midterm election. So they're feeling a different kind of pressure, not an ideological pressure about what does it mean to be a conservative, but the political pressure of trying to get reelected next year. And so we'll see what the bill looks like and if they're comfortable with the Medicaid cuts that look like they're coming.
David, does your bingo card include the same names or any others?
No, the big, Nathan, of course, right on it as usual. Yeah, those are some of the names. Lisa Murkowski has been concerned about Medicaid as well. Tom Tillis could be a guy. He's not happy with some of the clean energy cuts that the House wants to make, so maybe you add those two. And what's interesting about people like Tom Tillis is, as Nathan was mentioning, Tom Tillis up for re-election, so he's in a dangerous spot. But then again, if you look at President Trump's power here, if you will, over the whole process, it's better in the House than the Senate, right? In the House, they're up for re-election every 2 years. The Senate, obviously, it's every 6 years. It's different. And for example, Ron Johnson, he's not up for re-election in 2026, so you're not going to primary him here after this vote. He's up, I think, in Nathan, you can tell me, I think it's 2028. But the bottom line is that it's a little bit different in terms of Trump's clout here in the Senate. It's important. It's a factor. It's a big one, but not as big as in the House.
A little more cushion. You had mentioned earlier Medicaid. Opposition to Medicaid cuts have senators from all parts of the GOP saying it's a bad idea. We saw Iowa Senator Joni Ernst step in it and try to play a little bit of cleanup. David, what kind of long-term political backlash could the party see, if any, if these cuts go through?
Well, there's going to be a media that's going to go along with the traditional talking point from Democrats, which is throw Granny from the cliff, right? I mean, we've heard this before. This is a tired and true playbook from the left. In other words, you got to be careful. The seniors are going to be in trouble here. The Republicans are going to have a real task ahead of them to message this effectively. They're trying to say that they're going to kick illegal immigrants off of Medicaid. They're also saying they're going to basically have work requirements, and people that are able-bodied will not be able to be on Medicaid. Okay, so you're going to say that, but you really got to combat the throwing Granny from the cliff scenario, which is going to be very, very hard to overcome. It's going to be tough for the Republicans. Speaking of tough,
Nathan, what areas of the bill can Republicans cut to appease all sides, whether it's the deficit hawks, fiscal hawks, or those who are looking for other things to keep both their party, their constituents, and importantly, the president happy?
Well, there's no easy answer, because as David pointed out at the beginning of the segment, when you make one change, you affect another. So there are senators who want to make fewer Medicaid cuts, but that means that you're going to have to, if you are concerned about the deficit, then you're going to have to address maybe the tax cuts and extending some of the tax cuts to all folks. And so it's really Republicans. David really struck on an important thing. When you hear Republicans talk about there'll be no Medicaid cuts, what they're talking about is that there won't be any benefit cuts, but there will be eligibility cuts, that some people will no longer receive that coverage. Democrats are banking that that is going to have an impact on the electorate, and there will be a backlash against that. Republicans are confident that those people shouldn't be getting that benefit anyway, and there will be that the voters are on their side, and that is why we have to wait until this is implemented to see what happens. And it is remarkable, though, that the work requirement that is currently in place doesn't take effect till December of 2026. After the midterm elections, so someone is aware that this could be a problem.
Okay, final question for both of you.
And John,
go ahead, David.
Oh, go ahead, please.
No, after you.
Well, I was going to say, and that's why Republicans say, when they say waste, fraud, and abuse, the abuse part is the work requirement part. That able-bodied people shouldn't be on Medicaid to begin with. That's why they call it abuse. Go ahead, John.
I was just going to ask about the president's hand in all of this, but we are out of time. We're going to have to save it for the next time the two of you join us. David and Nathan, thank you so much for joining us and helping us understand a little bit of the complexities with the big, beautiful bill. Coming up, a surprising discovery in Jerusalem, what it reveals about faith and history in the Holy Land. Welcome back. An ancient Manura carving, hidden for 1,500 years, has been uncovered near a Christian site in Jerusalem. As CBN Middle East correspondent Julie Stahl reports, the discovery is a striking symbol of faith and history in the heart of the Holy Land.
This 1,500-year-old ornate limestone piece once sat on top of an ancient column. The carved image on it surprised archaeologists.
At first, when we found it, we didn't even realize it was a menorah because it was sitting upside down. Only afterward, when we started to examine it and flip the image, we realized it was an 8-branched menorah.
Excavation director Dr. Uzi Ad says they discovered the artifact on the floor of a Byzantine-era building near a church.
Usually at the top of a capital there is a flower. Here, suddenly, there's a menorah, and that is unique. The menorahs of that period were not standardized. So the symbol, the shape of the menorah, sometimes appears with 7 branches and sometimes with 8 branches.
The piece was unearthed 5 years ago during excavations for building a new entrance to Jerusalem.
We have no other capitals of this quality at the site. It raised my questions in general about how it came to be here. What is a menorah doing at a non-Jewish, Byzantine Christian site? You would expect several capitals to be similar. Here, it's a one-of-a-kind capital.
Experts say menorahs, modeled after the temple candelabra, typically appear at synagogues. Since there's no evidence of a synagogue at this site, they believe this capital may have been moved for another use.
Following the research, we now know that it was indeed produced in the region. Based on the type of limestone it was made from, it is probably local. There's significance here because this symbol, which even appears today on our shirts and in other places, carries a sense of national pride when you find a menorah.
Rabbi Amichai Eliyahu, Israeli Minister of Heritage, says finding the capital is tangible evidence of the profound and undeniable connection between the Jewish people, Jerusalem, and the land of Israel throughout thousands of years, and serves as a bridge between our glorious past and the renewal of our independence in the State of Israel. Julie Stahl, CBN News, Jerusalem.
Remarkable discovery. Thank you, Julie. Coming up, bringing joy to kids one playground at a time. That's next on Faith Nation. Finally tonight, a cancer survivor made it his life mission to bring joy to children fighting the life-threatening disease. When he was just 3 years old, Eric Newman received a liver cancer diagnosis, which means he's now well acquainted with the challenges many immunocompromised children face, like not being able to play on public playgrounds. That's why he founded the Rock Solid Foundation, a nonprofit that rallies communities to build play sets for families battling cancer free of charge.
You're able to see and make a difference in another human's life. And I think that's what the power of community is, and that's how this thing is rocking and rolling throughout the country.
Rocking and rolling indeed. Over the past 16 years, the Rock Solid Foundation has partnered with hundreds of hospitals and built thousands of play sets, giving hope and support to families across the country and bringing joy and smiles to faces, as you can see there in that video, to many young kids. Well, that's going to do it for Faith Nation tonight. Thank you for joining us. We hope to see you right back here again tomorrow.